stepped out on their own event. There were other girls who did compete, but the biological boy still won against girls. And the lie that this child is being fed, of course, is that people don't want them to compete in sports, that they're trying to keep them away from.
They feel hopeless and they're quitting. We need to make it stop. I'm done. I'm so done with it.
What is the way forward for our girls and women in our spaces and opportunities? Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. I really appreciate you clicking on the video to watch it, and I would love it if you would click on the subscribe button and help me to grow this channel. And if you're returning, welcome back. I truly do appreciate your continued support on my channel, and I hope that you are subscribed as well. So as I'm sure we're all aware of by now, the Biden administration has abolished Title IX. This was not a rewrite, because the purpose of Title IX was to protect women, to protect females, and to make it possible to have things dedicated specifically to women and girls without it being considered discrimination against men. Title IX was based on the fundamental and undeniable understanding that the biology between males and females is significantly different, not to mean inferior, but different, and that if women were not allowed to separate ourselves from men in all of these different areas because we cannot do anything about the fact that men are physically bigger and stronger, then we would not have the same privileges of safety or the same chances to earn scholarships and awards based on our own unique mental and physical capacities and traits. This new ruling completely denies all of that. It denies all of the uniqueness between men and women and just says that whatever you think in your head is real, and ultimately grants supremacy to boys or men who can't cut it in their own spaces, and says that these subpar males can now enter into women's spaces and opportunities and pretend that they are at some kind of championship level by taking these things away from girls and women. And it's not just the fact that it's taking things away from biological females, it's the fact that this is going to make things significantly worse, including punishing women for not going along with it. Some of you may have seen this video going around, I believe it was last week or the week before, of this shot put team out of a middle school in West Virginia who chose to stand for all women and girls, who chose to stand for their right to a fair competition, as men and boys have always had the opportunity to do, and they boycotted their event because there was a boy playing on the other team. They would go and act like they were about to toss the ball, and then they stopped and then would go back to their teammates. And there were 5 of them that chose to do this. I may have mentioned that before. Now, the interesting thing that this was in West Virginia, and there is a ruling in the state of West Virginia that says that these biological boys cannot compete in girls' sports. However, the exception was made for this particular student because they have apparently been transitioning since 3rd grade. And it would make them uncomfortable to have to compete against people who share the same biology as them, which are the other boys. So all of these girls have to make the sacrifice for their feelings. And I believe there might be hormones and puberty blockers involved at this point because this individual is now 13. And of course, this is another argument made by these anti-woman activists who say that it's only boys' puberty that makes them physically stronger than girls. So if they just stop that, then there's no difference. However, that is just not true. So this is the student in question here, going by the name Becky Pepper Jackson. This article says, a transgender middle school student in West Virginia won his shot put competition by more than 3 feet last week, as a slew of young girls staged a protest and refused to compete against them. Becky Pepper Jackson, 13, took first place at the Harrison County Championships track meet last Thursday with a 32-foot throw, records show. The second place competitor finished with a 29-foot effort. So even though these 5 girls bravely stepped out on their own event, there were other girls who did compete, but the biological boy still won by 3 feet. So Yeah, it gets worse. As I mentioned earlier, the new regulations against girls and women's sports, which is not Title IX, but the thing that the Biden administration has now made up, is that there is now room for punishment for girls who do not go along with this. In this new non-Title IX Title IX, it can now be considered a form of harassment to not use the preferred pronouns of someone who has decided that their identity does not align with reality, and that the government can pull federal funding from schools that do not enforce this non-science or fact-based language. Does that mean when these new non-Title IX regulations go into effect that girls choosing not to compete based on the unfair advantage a boy has over them would be considered harassment? Would that be grounds for the school to lose funding because their girl sports teams are refusing to comply? Does that mean that any girl who competes in sports is just going to have to accept the risk of having to compete against a boy if they want a shot at athletics at all and just pray that it doesn't happen? These are all the questions that we need to be considering. But even though the new regulations against girls and women's opportunities have not gone into effect yet, that does not mean that punishment is not already being doled out. I guarantee that the cruelty we are about to talk about that has been imposed on these girls is meant to make an example of them as a stern warning to anyone else who tries to stand up against the tyrannical executive orders of this government. So following this incident, this article says 5 West Virginia middle schoolers who protested a transgender athlete's participation in a track and field competition have been barred from future meets. West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey filed a lawsuit against the Harrison County Board of Education on the dissenting students' behalf after they were blocked from upcoming meets following their protests at the April 18th shot put competition, West Virginia Watch reported. Former collegiate swimmer turned activist Riley Gaines, who has been an outspoken critic of trans athletes participating in girls' sporting events, has weighed in on the issue, writing, "These girls stood up for what they believed in and their coach barred them from competing. Insane." In a post on X on Monday, Morrissey tweeted Gaines' message, noting he plans to do everything in my power to defend these brave young girls. So as we've been talking about this issue for years at this point, most of the arguments have been that girls need to boycott. People have asked, why are they going along with this? If these girls want support in their fight for their rights, then they need to stand up for themselves and refuse to play if there's a boy on their team or on another team or in their locker room or bathroom, etc. And while I still agree with that, I think it's important to not minimize the impact of it or make it seem like it is just as easy as sitting on the sidelines and refusing to play. What we are asking these girls to do, which I still believe they should do, has massive implications for them. We are not asking them just to sit out. We are asking them to accept the very real possibility that this could be the end of athletics and opportunities entirely for them. And hopefully it will save these things for future generations of girls and women as more people wake up and realize that at this point we just have men's sports and mentally ill men's sports. Those are essentially the two divisions right now. But for them at this point in time in history, it might mean a huge sacrifice for them. And we need to help them understand that as we put this mantle on their shoulders. I also think is that a lot of this responsibility needs to be put on the shoulders of these parents who are raising their kids to think that this is okay, who are raising their boys to think that they deserve a place on the girls' team and convincing them to falsely believe that they do not have a physical advantage over these girls and that these girls are the problem. These are the parents that need to take responsibility for this. She apparently did an interview a year ago about her child saying that love is the only answer, obviously under the delusional and narcissistic view that girls who don't want to compete against her biological boy are only doing so out of hate, which is completely false. This was a comment that her child made about wanting to compete. It says, "I just want to run. I come from a family of runners. I know how hurtful a law like this is to all kids like me who just want to play sports with classmates." And this was in response to the West Virginia law that says boys cannot compete against girls. And the lie that this child is being fed, of course, is that people don't want them to compete in sports, that they're trying to keep them away from these opportunities, which is not true at all. But of course, there are so many lies that have to go into making this ideology work, including the lies of the WPATH doctors who admitted that kids don't know what they're signing up for when they go into this, that both parents and kids don't have all of the information about the permanent effects of puberty blockers and hormones, and that there is a really good chance that they are going to grow to regret this when they're older. And another lie that this mom has convinced her child to believe is that they're practically Rosa Parks. So this is another quote from this kid saying, "Mom, what would Rosa do? She didn't give up her seat on the bus, and look what happened. I don't want to give up playing on my team either. This isn't just for me. This is for all the other kids out there too." The thing is, Rosa didn't want to take a seat from anyone else on the bus. She just wanted to be able to have the opportunity to ride the bus like everyone else, which is what everyone is advocating for, that it doesn't matter what your gender identity is or what your sexuality is or what your skin color is or what your biological sex is, that everybody has the opportunity. But this is about what is fair. But what this child is being convinced to believe is right is to take the seat at the front and only allow anyone to ride who confirms the delusional beliefs that they have been led to think are rooted in reality, and that anyone who doesn't go along with it should not only be denied a seat, but should actually be thrown under said bus. And don't get me wrong, I don't have any ill feelings toward this kid at all. In fact, they are a victim as well. They are just not a victim of the girls that didn't want to compete against them. They are a victim of an ideology that they aren't even aware isn't real. When kids are young, we shape their reality. And if you normalize even the most sick and twisted delusional ideas in their world as they're growing up and tell them that it's everyone else who is wrong, then that is exactly what they will accept as truth. The idea of being able to choose or change your gender isn't real to them because it's based on science, facts, and reality, and they have a firm grasp on what that means. It's because it's what's been normalized to them, and they have no frame of reference to question it. And they probably think that everyone chooses their gender, and that these girls are only girls because it's what they chose to be. I know that these girls did not want to do this, at least not to do it out of spite. I know that they did not take any joy in hurting their classmates' feelings. That goes against our nature, particularly as women, and our desire to not hurt people's feelings is what has made it so easy for mentally ill boys and men and far left extremist politicians and narcissistic parents to push these policies and have them accepted by so many women. Our compassion is what's being used as a weapon, and here we are. We have no more spaces and opportunities of our own. Just as a side note, I would bet that this kid's mom believes that all of women's rights are tied up in abortion, and restriction on abortion is what will oppress women, all while raising a son to think it's their right to take over girls' opportunities. Just to wrap things up, I want to share this speech that was given by a dad at a recent school board meeting, and I think it is just so perfect regarding this issue.
Unfortunately, we're seeing more biological males come in as females, and they're dominating sports right now. Sorry. My daughter didn't run her favorite sport yesterday because a guy came and he's dominating. She has 13 CIF patches and didn't run because we're allowing this to come into our schools and take opportunities away from our girls. I'm not a crier. I'm just angry and I'm frustrated why we let an average male athlete, biological male, can come in and be a top female. You can take the times I ran my freshman year, I would have won the state of California 35 times in a row. That's the difference between a male and a female, but we continue to allow this. These girls are discouraged, they feel hopeless, and they're quitting. We need to make it stop. I'm done. I'm so done with it. And I'm going to leave it 53 seconds on there because it's just common sense. And just it needs to be fixed. Stop taking things away from our little girls.
I would love to hear all of your thoughts on this in the comments below. Like, what do you think these girls should do? What is the way forward for our girls and women in our spaces and opportunities when there is just even more stacked against us? Please hit that like button. Make sure that you are subscribed. Please share this video with anybody that you think needs to be more informed on this issue, because I am always shocked at the number of people that have no idea that this stuff is going on. And one day it is going to be them or their child or their daughter that is at risk or that faces this situation, and they're going to be completely blindsided by it. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you watching the video. I appreciate you being here. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.